This is the first Ask Me Anything we've done, so I'm excited to kick this off. But before I get into it, I want to introduce who we have on our call with us today. First off, we have, and I'm going to go alphabetically so that no one is more important than anyone else. We have Christiaan Brinkhoff. Christiaan is a CUGC networking content leader. He does a lot for us on our networking side. He's written a lot of blog posts for CUGC. He's led some webinars. He's also a CTP. He's an Azure MVP and a VMware vExpert. And he is a cloud architect and technology evangelist, and he is based in the Netherlands. And as you can see, I've put everyone's Twitter handles down at the bottom of the screen for you, so you can follow them all on Twitter. Also with us today, we have Harsh Gupta. He is the Director of Product Management at Citrix, overseeing Citrix virtual apps and desktops. He's based out of Fort Lauderdale, and he's best known for developing the virtual apps and desktops service from Citrix Cloud. We have with us Nicolas Ignoto. Nicolas is a New York Metro CUGC lead in finance and healthcare space, and he is, of course, based in New York. We also have Marius Sandbu. He is another one of our CUGC networking content leaders, also has written some blog posts and done some webinars for us all about networking. He is a CTP and the technical lead for cloud architecture and is based in Norway. And I heard from him this morning that it is very cold right now for him, although I know it's really cold in the United States and a lot of places as well. And finally, last but not least, we have Paul Stancil. Paul is our Connecticut, Rhode Island CUGC leader. He is a CTP and a VMware vExpert. He is the director of the National EUC practice at his job and is based in Connecticut. Before I get into all of our questions with these guys, I want to remind you all of our format for today. So since it is an Ask Me Anything webinar, we did solicit questions from all of you before at registration and throughout all of our promotion, and we got an impressive number of questions from everyone. So we do have quite a number that we've already selected that we're going to start off with, but I know that as we go through the questions, you guys will have more. So please do type those into the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll keep an eye on those, and the ones that that make sense for us to ask, we'll add those at the end. I know that there may be some overlap, so we'll do our best to get to them, and we may not have enough time today, so if that happens, we'll also get to all those questions offline. And I think Marius mentioned that we would all get together and get all the answers and write a blog post to follow up with anything that didn't get addressed today. So, so we will get your questions answered. And also, I want to let you know that the presentation is being recorded, and you will all receive a link via email as soon as that recording is ready. Okay, so let's dive right in it. Oh, and finally, sorry, I have one more slide for you. Don't forget, tweet about us. Make sure you use the hashtag #MyCUGC so that we can see your tweets and retweet them or answer them, and be sure to follow us at MyCUGC on Twitter as well. All right, let's dive in. So let's start nice and easy. Question number one that we received is, what is Citrix Cloud? And we're going to direct this question to Paul Stancil.
Helps if I take it off mute. Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. We're good wherever you are. Hopefully it's hopefully you're staying warm, even if you aren't actually warm. So that's an interesting question, right? What is Citrix Cloud? So I was curious. I asked Google, what is Citrix Cloud? And of course, it gave me the Wikipedia answer, which is Citrix Cloud is a workspace management platform for IT administrators to design, deliver, and manage virtual desktops and applications and other services such as file sharing on any device. That's a nice generic answer, right? The reality is this: Citrix Cloud is a control plane in the cloud. So it's a control plane like you would typically do for an on-prem Citrix installation, delivery controller, storefront, potentially Netscaler services, pieces like that. In this case, it's wrapped and hosted in Citrix's Azure tenant. It's currently on Azure East if you're in the US, and then there's a couple other locations as well if you're out across the world. So basically what that does is abstract that management layer for you. It lets you not have to worry about things like managing the underlying servers for the delivery controllers, having to manage SQL for those particular pieces, things like that. So it's a management plane only solution. It does not actually host your workloads. That requires something else, which could be cloud, could be on-prem.
Okay. So now that we have that answer, how many of you, and I'm going to launch a poll now, how many of you are actually using, let me get this poll going, there we go. How much of you are actually using Citrix Cloud, planning to, you're considering it, or you're in the process of validating it? About 60%. Here we go. Let's see. Another couple seconds. It's like neck and neck on yes and considering, but all right, here, I'll share the results now. So yeah, so 33% yes, 36% considering. Good to know. All right, question number 2. This one's going to go to Nicolas. How do we get started with Citrix Cloud?
Hi, everyone. So the first thing that you need to have is, of course, a Citrix Cloud account. So you can create one on onboarding.cloud.com, and you will have to choose between a region. So you can choose between the US, Europe, or Asia. So it's basically where you want to put your cloud control plane. You can use your MyCitrix account if you want, or your citrix.com account, or you don't have to set up a new one. So when you have your account, you can request access to services, because by default you will not have anything that you can use. So you can request test for virtual apps and desktop, for share file, and all other services that are available in Citrix Cloud right now. And if you decide at the end of your test to purchase those services, you don't need to set up new accounts. You will be able to keep your configuration. So what do you get? What do you get with this test? So it's limited to 25 users, and it can only be used for up to 60 days. So you can ask to renew your test period, but I think it's only up to 60 days. So when you have all your services set up, what you need to decide is if you want to put workloads, even you want to use your workloads on premises or on public clouds. So that's a decision that's up to you. Citrix Cloud will be able to work with both. So when you made that decision, what you need to do is install cloud connectors. So it's either in Citrix, in your local infrastructure or in any public cloud provider. So there is a lot of best practices for cloud connectors. Most of the time, Citrix recommend to install the connectors on a specific server with nothing else installed. I've seen many customers installing this with Azure AD Connect on the same server, but it's not the best practice. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all for this question. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the next one is for you also. What ports need to be open in our firewall, for Citrix Cloud?
Yeah, so this question, the answer is it depends. It depends what you're going to use, because there is different port based on the services that you're using. So if, for example, if you're using share file, you will need to open HTTPS to your .sharefile.com account. If you're using WEM, you will need to open HTTPS to wem.cloud.com. The default configuration is to open HTTPS to cloud.com to be able to install the cloud connector and to register your account with the connector. So the Citrix published, they published a good document with all the ports you need for all the services that they have in Citrix Cloud. So I will post this link if I can in the chat, if not after the webinar, so you can take a look and see what port you need to open.
Okay, thank you. All right, so these questions, the next two here, are directed to Harsh. How does licensing work in Citrix Cloud, and what are the differences with on-premises deployment?
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Answering to the question, how does licensing work in Citrix Cloud? If you think about it's typically user device license, so that per user per year or per term. It's very similar to the on-prem licensing that you have. The subtle difference there is for the on-prem licenses, you can actually release licensing after a gap of 30 days, 90 days. But in the cloud, we've built up another utility where after 30 days of inactivity, the admins have the option of releasing a license for a user. And that's really to support attrition or role changes within the company. However, on the other side, we also offer CCU licenses at a premium plus package for certain hybrid or TTU type of transactions. Okay.
So Arsh, I have a question on the chat. Someone's asking about CCU licensing in Citrix Cloud.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, for certain high-end SKUs that we have, or a Workspace Premium Plus, as we call it, there is an option of getting a CCU license, but that is the only option as we have today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Harsh, the next one goes out to you as well. How secure is Citrix Cloud? That's a big question.
Okay, that really depends on your comprehension of Citrix Cloud. Because if you really think what you really care about are your workloads and your Active Directory. In the notion of Citrix Cloud, what we host, as Paul mentioned at the beginning, is really the management stack, while the actual workloads and Active Directory sit within your resource location. So if you think from a security standpoint, we have no ways of touching your core IP. So all we could, even if you use MCS, we could only clone or power manage your VMs, but never get inside of those. Secondly, your Active Directory, we never sync your Active Directory to the cloud. It always stays within your resource location, and we do a live read and then pretty much get out of it. However, the third piece of data, if you are at all sensitive about this, is the metadata, as in all your configuration, which user logged in. Yes, we host it in the cloud, and there we have a logical partition where we absolutely make sure that they are isolated and there is no data leakage. So these are the three aspects how we ensure security of Citrix Cloud.
Thank you. All right, next question is for Christiaan. Actually, the next couple of questions are for Christiaan. So this one, what about DR and HA with Citrix Cloud, and what is the SLA?
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. So basically, the Citrix Cloud, as earlier mentioned, is a control plane, a cloud offering. So Citrix takes care of the DR and HA of that environment. So you don't need to rebuild or make that high available or anything like that. But you need to keep in mind that your infrastructure as a service or your on-premises environment is your own responsibility. So when you, for example, deploy servers on top of Azure, there's a different SLA for that. So that's a 99.5 SLA percentage on virtual machine consumption. So you need to keep in mind that you need to take care of that DR solution if you want to go outside that SLA and make it more reliable for your use case. There are certain possibilities for that. You can just use the native disaster recovery as a service solution for that. For Azure is that Azure Site Recovery, for example. So the only thing that you then need to do is replicate your workers, your XANApp, your virtual apps and desktop servers to another location to make it more available. And the Citrix Cloud control plane will keep running on the background as part of that SLA offering, which is 99.9% SLA per month right now. And also keep in mind that replicating your servers, which are part of like MCS, cannot be replicated by any disaster recovery solution because of the agent. So you need to be sure that your master image will be replicated to a different data center location and then will be rebuilt in a disaster recovery scenario. So that are my two cents on that.
Okay.
I just have a question from the chat. So it's a question about data center location for Citrix Cloud.
Okay. So I think you already mentioned that, right? So there are 3 locations, one in the USA, one in Europe, and one in APJ. It's all running on top of Azure. So Citrix Cloud is running on Azure. So Citrix is a Microsoft customer and a partner as well. So that's great. So that are the 3 locations where the Citrix Cloud is running right now. But there's no like high availability right now between those different locations as part of your offering.
Thank you.
Okay, so this question was also for you, Christiaan. Which cloud providers are compatible to host workloads associated with Citrix Cloud?
Okay, so almost every cloud is supported with Citrix Cloud right now as part of the host connection configuration, or either through separate configuration installations on your Citrix Cloud connectors. So the clouds that are supported is obviously Azure, AOM, as well as ASM. AWS is supported, so Amazon Web Services is supported. Google Cloud is supported. But for Google Cloud, you need to keep in mind that only power management is currently supported, so no possibility to enroll images through your machine catalog deployment with machine creation services, MCS. IBM SoftLayer is as well supported, and Oracle is supported, but not from the host connection part, so you need to do additional things for that. And VMware vCloud with PVS, Pixie Boot support will come as well, or is already available. I don't know the status about that, but that's something that is recently announced as the Citrix Ready partner with VMware. And also keep in mind that basically with Citrix Cloud connectors, you can connect to every location around the globe, every data center, because that is like native proxy connection to your own data center. The only limitation that you then have is that no power management or no image management will work. So you only basically can like set up a VDA remote PC connection to a VM or anything like that, like a Windows Server or Windows 10 machine.
Okay. This one was for you. You elaborated, or you touched on it, but I don't know if there's more that you want to elaborate on about how Citrix is supported on Google Cloud.
Yeah. So as being said in the previous section, Citrix Cloud supports Google Cloud right now as part of the host connection menu setup, but only power management. So you can connect and you can reboot your machines as part of that. But MCS image management is not yet supported, but it's coming soon. So I don't know if Harsh want to elaborate on this one, but as far as my information goes, it's like this year, so anytime soon.
Yeah, Christiaan's right. That is, we are actively working on it, and the plan of record is sometime this year.
Great.
Okay. Okay, so this one I think can be directed at all of you, so this will be fun. Which cloud provider do you recommend with Citrix Cloud?
Should I start and then the rest can comment?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So for me, that's an easy one because yeah, I'm an Azure MVP, right? So that definitely is Azure. And the reason because of that is that it integrates with everything, whatever Azure brings to the table. So every type of machine, it has like power management, it has MCS support. The virtual machines in Azure are performing better when you compare to AWS. And all the other services that you can leverage when you go for Citrix Cloud, such as app layering, for example, can be supported as well directly with Azure. So that is my reason why I choose Azure above any other cloud right now for Citrix services.
So I guess I'll tackle it next. The easy answer is Azure, for all the reasons that were just stated, but also because of Microsoft's licensing requirements. You know, Microsoft requires that a desktop OS, which is Windows 10 or Windows 7, be run on dedicated infrastructure or in public cloud infrastructure in Azure. So if you're running it on AWS, if you're running it on GCP, then you're running it on the dedicated host option, which tends to pretty dramatically increase the costs for that type of infrastructure. That said, we do a lot of XenApp, you know, traditional server hosted desktop published applications on AWS, and it works great. There's a lot of feature parity with Amazon. It's just a lot of times for the customers we have, it comes down to the desktop license requirement and cost.
Yeah, on my side, so I agree with both of you. Microsoft Cloud is the go-to right now. But I've seen a lot of customers also that are looking at Google Cloud, especially because of the cost. So they have good prices right now, even if they don't have all the features. So I'm assuming that in the future, when all the Citrix services are available for Google Cloud, we will see more and more customers on Google Cloud.
Yeah, and just add my 5 cents as well. We're seeing a lot of customers going towards Google. It's it's a lot cheaper, a lot more flexible, a lot faster. When we are seeing a lot of when doing performance testing, we see that it's a lot faster than just the same virtual instance types on Azure and AWS. So hopefully Citrix can get a lot more integrations in place with Google, and of course now with Netscaler support, we're getting closer.
Okay. So Marius, I think this question is directed to you, and maybe with some input from Harsh. What is replacing SmartScale?
You know, I'll actually pick this up.
Okay.
Yeah. I would call it less about replacing SmartScale, but more about overhauling our power management completely. Because today the experience for our admins is not conducive, because on one side we are doing VDI power management within Studio, and then shared hosted desktop for applications within SmartScale. What we wanted to do is we wanted to make this experience simpler and more fluid. So we've added all of the power management within Studio now, and we've renamed it Power Management to be Autoscale. And now just there, you would be able to do power management for your shared hosted desktops and app and VDI, and you will get all the benefits that we initially had and more. So that is why, and I would say you should also think about this year to be the year where we want to support more hybrid deployments, as all the speakers in the room have been mentioning how deployments are going from Azure to other clouds. So these are all about hybrids. And Autoscale would be our second step in after provisioning to help these hybrid deployments. And just so you know, this is going to be a cloud-only feature, because all power management is really around the cloud. Hope that helps.
Okay. All right. So I heard that Citrix Cloud does not support PVS. Is that true? Nicolas, I think this one is for you.
Yes. So this question comes a lot when I discuss with customers, because a lot of them, they are using PVS right now. So is PVS working in Citrix Cloud? So the short answer is it's not working in Citrix Cloud, but there is a but. You can you can have it work with Citrix Cloud. So you can still keep your local infrastructure, your local PVS infrastructure, and use the Citrix Cloud control plane. You will use Citrix virtual apps and desktop to control your PVS device from the Citrix Studio. So why it is not in Citrix Cloud right now? So the short answer is PVS is heavy on the network usage because it streams the VM OS. So that the cloud is probably not the best location to host something like that. At this time, at least, you probably wanted to have it on your local infrastructure. So if you want to configure it, you just go in Citrix Cloud, you open your virtual apps and desktop console, and you add a new machine catalog. You will be able to select Citrix provisioning and enter the IP of your local PVS infrastructure. Of course, you still need to have cloud connectors in that case. Also keep in mind that you still need SQL database locally, so you still need to have a license for that. You still need to have a storage repository for your vDisk. It can be on the network or on a share. And all the licensing, so for SQL, you need a license. For PVS, you need a Citrix license as well. That's not covered by Citrix Cloud.
Okay. Nicolas, this one is also for you. Do I need to run LTSR or CRVDAs to be supported with Citrix Cloud?
So LTSR and CA, so CA, current release, VDAs. So that's also a question I have a lot. So customers, they use LTSR version or CR versions, and they are wondering which version should they use with Citrix Cloud. So you can, since 7.15 LTSR, so Citrix introduced something called mixed mode. So it means that you can use either CR or LTSR VDA with Citrix Cloud. So for example, if you're using 2016 or 2019, you probably want to use a CR version of the VDA, and it will be supported by Citrix. And at the same time, you can use LTSR version of VDA for 2008 R2, 2012 R2, and it will be supported as well. So the only thing you need to keep in mind in that case, so if you use a CR component, you will have to upgrade every 6 months or so to stay supported.
Yeah, and I'll just add to something what Nico was saying. If you think about our 3 release trains, we have a current release train, we have an LTSR release train, and then we have the cloud release train. If to be supported, you should have CR management stack and CR VDAs. To be on LTSR, you have to have LTSR management stack and LTSR VDAs and other components. With Citrix Cloud Virtual Apps and Desktop is the only time we've given customers the flexibility to deploy both. You could have current release VDAs as well as the LTSR long-term services branch VDAs. So this is the flexibility we wanted to give because we were cognizant of customers, as Nico was mentioning earlier, that have needs of supporting 2008 Windows 7. So now this is the only deployment method where you could have a combined environment supported by one management stack through Citrix Cloud Virtual Apps and Desktop Service.
All right, thank you. Okay, next, is Citrix ADC available in Citrix Cloud? So this one is up for grabs to whoever would like to answer it.
Yeah, I can take it.
Okay.
So the regular or the former Citrix Netscaler or ADC, what it's called now, it's not available in Citrix Cloud as a service. We have some other services that are available, such as the web application firewall feature and the intelligent traffic management feature, which is part of the Sodexis acquisition that Citrix made a year back, which is now being integrated into Citrix Cloud. And also we have the Netscaler gateway as a service, which is part of Citrix Cloud, which allows the end users to connect directly to the VDAs without actually setting up your own dedicated ADC, which is available. But the traditional load balancing features and content switching and so on is still not a part of Citrix Cloud from a feature perspective.
Okay. All right, what is the multi-tenants concept in Citrix Cloud, and how does Citrix protect its customers' data? Who wants to go for that one?
Okay, if nobody else. What is the multi-tenant concept in Citrix Cloud, and how does Citrix protect its customers' data? I would just support protect customers' data. It's a mandate for us, right? We sign privacy policies for you, and we have the right level of data isolation. So I would say let's not even consider that your data is at risk. Now, how do we actually design a service? This is all about logical partitions of your data across any microservice in the world. So for every customer, what we've done, actually, I'll pull back. So the way the structure is designed, while it is unclear to a lot of people, the notion of that we have basically put Zen-Desktop and put it in the cloud is not the right way to think about it. What we've actually done is we have ripped apart most of the pieces and created microservices. So today, just within the DDC, there are many microservices that operate together, and each of them are actually stateless, right? So that's the notion how the cloud service was built up. And this is why we can give you upgrades at the pace at which we give you upgrades, and also with supporting zero downtimes. The only place where there's any state is the backend database, which we have isolated databases per customer. So as a particular service comes on board, or anytime you launch Studio, that is when the state starts to add up. So that is how we are multi-tenant, because we have this layer of microservices floating around.
Okay. This one is also up for any of you. Can you use VAD in Citrix Cloud and also get HDX insights and Netscaler analytics monitoring?
Yeah, so my understanding of this one is I think someone wants to use virtual apps and desktops and get HDX insights from Netscaler. So that's possible only if you use, I think, a local Netscaler in that case. You will get some insights from Citrix Cloud if your gateway is in Citrix Cloud.
Okay. All right. Harsh, can you tell us more about Citrix Cloud lifecycle and upgrades?
Right. We have multiple, as I was mentioning before, we have multiple microservices that we upgrade to make sure that customers get the latest and greatest. Our typical upgrade cycles are every 2 to 3 weeks. So if you look at your Citrix Cloud console, you'll start to see new features show up even without you noticing any change to your setup. So typically, our upgrade cycles are about 2 to 3 weeks, and I would say that's the answer to the question: 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. All right. How do we leverage 2FA in Citrix Cloud, and can we use our 2FA infrastructure located on premises? And I believe this one's going to Marius.
Yes. So, well, it's a good question. The problem is that as it is now, you can have Citrix Cloud integrated with Azure Active Directory and use Azure MFA for multi-factor authentication if you are using the native functionality in Citrix Cloud. However, if you are using Citrix Cloud and you have your own Netscaler gateway, virtual appliance, or a regular appliance, and you have your local storefront, you can still use your traditional MFA provider if you have that hosted locally. Of course, the problem is that Citrix Cloud, if you're using Netscaler Gateway as a service, you can't leverage any on-prem radius MFA providers because of the restriction when it comes to communication.
All right. Paul, what are some of the challenges that organizations are facing while migrating to Citrix Cloud?
So that's a really good question. A year ago, my answer would have been totally different. Today, the there are several blockers that we see, or challenges, I guess we shouldn't call them blockers, to customers that are making that migration. The first is if they've got significant two-factor authentication requirements. A lot of times, because Workspace is a newer product and still undergoing some development, there's some features that are missing from Workspace compared to a more traditional storefront. Two-factor authentication options, most specifically around Radius, are where we see a lot of challenges with customers that are looking to move today. There's also some traffic routing issues around the hairpinning of traffic if you're using Workspace, detecting whether you're an internal user versus an external user, that kind of thing. One that used to be big and we hardly ever see anymore is if they say that they have a no cloud policy. It still comes up occasionally for certain sectors, but in general, that one is pretty well overcome. And then the last one that there is a fix for is there was a lot of complaints that there was no migration tool set to get you from a traditional on-prem deployment to a Citrix Cloud deployment. The community stepped up. My buddy Shane O'Neill wrote a set of tools. You can find it on citrixtips.com, which is linked on my Twitter if you didn't catch that, where we can actually do migrations on-prem to the cloud. We can do cloud to on-prem. We can do cloud to cloud if you're moving from one cloud tenant to the other in terms of the Citrix Cloud hosting. So that's all free. It's out there, and it overcomes one of the gaps that we identified early in the process.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also see one challenge with so the link between Citrix Cloud and Microsoft Azure. So we had some outages, especially two in the past, I think 2 months with Azure MFA that just blocked some customers in the past for like at least a day or like more than a few hours. So it's a big issue for them. So when you're considering Citrix Cloud, you have to consider also this part. So if anything goes down in Azure, because Citrix Cloud has a deep integration with it, you can also be impacted.
All right, thank you. Paul, this one is also for you. Do you have a real world example of a significant positive impact of implementing Citrix Cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a major financial customer that had, I believe, 5 data centers across the U.S. They were a traditional build a Citrix site in each data center, which required a lot of management, a lot of overhead. And then they had an entire DR facility up and running 24/7 with hot hosts standing by and ready to go, which was actually a 6th Citrix site. We condensed and collapsed all of that to a single installation, single Citrix Cloud tenant, and then managed everything through that one. It was a real time saving for them in terms of what they had to do, what they had to worry about, being able to get visibility across the entire stack and not just in a siloed fashion. So things like that, from a DR perspective, where you can actually eliminate, in a lot of cases, running DR hardware. Customers were seeing a lot are moving a DR instance to the cloud where they can leave all the VDI spun down and then allow them to continue to have the Citrix presence. Because of Citrix Cloud, you don't have to leave the infrastructure up and running. It's just if and when there's a DR event, you turn it on and away you go. So definitely a lot of benefits there.
Okay. All right, this one's for Harsh, and it's about whether or not you think Citrix Cloud is mature enough to be enterprise ready.
Yeah, great question. So I would say the journey towards the cloud has been a little over 4 years now. While, yes, we had a few hiccups in the past, but we've got to a point where we're seeing a lot of large enterprises deploying within Citrix Cloud, virtual apps and desktop service. And I can actually, there are multiple customers out there that have, I would say, are launching at least 20,000 unique users every month. I think we have gone way past 4 million 4 million session launches every month. So I think we've got ourselves to a good state. And the questions around feature parity, we've solved most of them. Our security compliances are in place. So we've got to a very good place in terms of our enterprise readiness. And I would say there is never enough ready. We have always got ways to go, and we are actively working on it.
Right. All right, Marius, is it possible to build a prototype for Citrix using infrastructure as a code?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something I've been working on the last 4 or 5 months now. The good thing is that from Citrix perspective, and of course, there's a lot of great infrastructure as code software now that we can use, Terraform, Ansible, to actually automate a lot of the infrastructure components when you're running or building something in cloud. And also Citrix has been working on building a Terraform provider for Netscaler and also for Ansible for Netscaler. So it allows you to automate a lot of the networking components on the Netscaler itself. So building a prototype for Citrix using infrastructure as code such as Terraform is actually, well, getting a lot easier than it was previously, because now we can automate the entire process. So yes, it is quite possible to build a prototype for this. Of course, if you're using some of the pre-built templates in, for instance, Azure Marketplace, you can download the ARM template and use that as a prototype as well. But then you're using the native Azure functionality for doing that type of deployment.
Okay. Marius, this one is also for you. So when do you expect to see in-series machines to be leveraged for Citrix and Azure to support Nvidia vGPU on desktop OS?
Yeah, so that's another good question. And it's from the N series, the NV series in Azure has been supported from a terminal server perspective for quite some time. Hopefully, we'll see the support for running desktop OS and vGPU on Azure quite soon. We see that now that Microsoft is coming with new NV2 series options, which also allows for SSD-based storage, and with multi-user Windows 10. Hopefully, we'll have that full support quite soon.
Okay. So we've come to the end of our pre-submitted questions, so we have time now that we can take, we do have some bonus questions that we didn't have on the slides. We can take some of those, or we can, I'm not sure what's been coming in on the question panel, if there's some good ones you guys have seen in there that you want to bring up now.
Yeah, so I have few of them. So I will just merge them because they are the same topic. So people were asking about Oracle Cloud and IBM Cloud. So they want to know if it's supported with Citrix Cloud today.
Anyone?
Ash, maybe do you have information about this topic?
Yeah, so Nico, you mentioned Google Cloud and IBM Cloud? These are the two ones?
So IBM Cloud and Oracle Cloud.
And Oracle Cloud. I would say today we support them from an unmanaged operating system standpoint. Like there will be no host connections to those. Yeah, our plan is to have support for any cloud in a hybrid cloud story. It's I just don't have a good timing for those at this moment.
Okay. Do you see a lot of customers asking for those at this time?
I would say IBM's coming up quite a bit now.
Okay. I'll see also a lot of questions about API. So I know Marius talked about a little, and also Paul. So what's available today for Citrix Cloud?
Sorry, was that pointed to me again?
Yeah, I guess.
So from API standpoint, we have remote PowerShell APIs available, which are if you look at the PowerShell that we have available for on-prem, we've taken this pretty similar commandlets and put them into cloud, where we've just removed the site-wide settings away from you. So you do have a lot of remote PowerShell API access there. And then, to be honest, going forward, our plan is to bring a brand new API framework to you guys. So you would hear about a lot more about that in the coming months, if not weeks. And we are looking for early access adopters for that program.
Thank you.
So Nico, just to follow up on one of mine, Jeremy Strobel asked in the question window if I could elaborate on the hairpin traffic issue. So Workspace today is a Citrix Cloud only service and requires that you essentially access through the Netscaler gateway service, which is hosted, or Citrix ADC, which is hosted on Citrix Cloud. So what that means is that even if you're sitting today physically next to your VM, there is no methodology for Citrix Cloud to know that. So it's always going to send you out the public internet through the Netscaler Gateway POP, of which there are 12, I believe, worldwide right now, and then back in to your VM. Citrix knows this. They're working hard on a solution for it. So I don't expect it's going to remain that way forever. But today, if you're using Citrix Cloud and you're using Workspaces, you do face that hairpin traffic issue.
I also noticed that we got a question: who decided to rename the receiver to Workspace? Now we get customers confused over AVS Workspace and Workspaces. So Harsh, maybe you can elaborate on that one.
I don't know how to answer that question well, but it is, if you think about Citrix, right, we are basically delivering a complete end-to-end workspace to our customers. And that just does not mean Windows or Windows or non-Windows applications, but also, non-virtualized applications, but you think about your SaaS apps and mobile apps. Our concept with workspaces is the fact that we give you one single platform to access all of these resource types. So instead of having a particular endpoint client for one and different for another, we're consolidating all of this. That's why we've called this the Workspace app. And yes, we understand there are going to be some teething pains around the changes that we have made, but this is what we're trying to do conceptually.
There's also one other good question in the section here. Having infrastructure in VDI in the cloud is easy, but having the corp applications and data, that is the challenge. How do you handle performance from users accessing corp applications, data, email, etc. that still reside on-prem? It's of course a complex question, but I'm guessing we all have some answers to that one.
So, okay, since we're not all talking at once, I'll give the consultant answer. It depends. Yeah, it absolutely can be an issue if you're hosting your VDAs in a cloud infrastructure and you're not moving any of your apps and data there. It might not be. It depends entirely on your bandwidth, your pipes, what type of applications you're running. If you're running all SaaS apps, for example, then no, it's not going to matter in the slightest. But if you're running database heavy, back-end, intensive data transmit type applications, yeah, then you might see an impact in moving your infrastructure, your hosting infrastructure to the cloud. So like anything else, it's going to depend situation to situation on what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah, and one thing that I've noticed now doing a lot of Office 365 migrations is, of course, it's always the network is going to have some form of latency issues or packet loss and something. That's of course one of the most important steps, especially when you're starting to set up solutions in cloud. Is always make sure that the network is working functionally, optimize on the client itself, the network, the core network, the wireless, to ensure that you get the get the most out of the user experience from a networking perspective. And of course, there's a lot of, especially from a storage perspective, there's a lot of distributed storage replication functionality. We see now that Amazon has a file sync option. We see that Azure has a file sync option. Of course, that can be something that can handle or move the data closer to the applications to make the applications work a little bit better, instead of trying to have an application hosted in the cloud and data locally and having data going back and forth between express route or VPN tunnel. Latency is always a big issue.
Also, I have one question from the chat about the location of the services. Today, Thorsten is asking about analytics. So today, analytics is only available in the US. So Arch, is there any plan to have this service also in the EU?
Yeah, I'll get back on that one. I'll have to follow up with a few people.
Okay.
Okay, do you guys have any more questions out there that that you want to answer from the chat, or do you want to go through some of these other questions that came in earlier?
There's also one from the start of the webinar almost. So someone's asking if we can use Storefront on Prem with Citrix Cloud. So if they don't want to use Citrix Workspace, for example, instead using local infrastructure.
Yeah, the answer is yes. So whether you're using Netscaler or not, the cloud connectors would be what you would put in place of where you would typically add your delivery controllers in the storefront configuration, and it works perfectly fine.
Okay, do you know if he has an impact on the licensing? Because there is 3 models for Citrix Cloud, and do you need to have something specific without Workspace, or do you have to just get the full bundle?
That's an interesting question. I've never hit any license issues. Harsh, I don't know if you want to answer that one specifically.
So is the question that to get the workspace service, do you have to buy a different type of license?
It's more the opposite. Is someone doesn't want to use Workspace, but want to use Citrix Cloud services?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing: workspace services is a part of any service that you buy, because that is your entry for the end user. However, for any reason you do not want to use the workspace and used to use the on-prem storefront, you're absolutely entitled to do that. There is no different licensing; it's the same license model.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and you do still have the features like local host cache and all that you would traditionally see when you use the on-prem storefront. So it's definitely a supported model.
I also noticed a final question that came in here. What will be the bandwidth between Citrix Cloud connector and to the Citrix Cloud? I don't have any answers to that. Have you done any measurements of the bandwidth usage that it has?
Okay, so I'll take this one up again. When you say bandwidth, I'm going to make a couple of statements here. One is if you're using Netscaler gateway service, if you're not using, because that is the piece that throttles that network. So if you're not using Netscaler gateway service, it's fairly, it's all the traffic that's flowing from your connectors to the cloud is your brokering traffic, or your CVP as we call it. For things like that, we have typically said, and the moment you've got 5,000 users, you're good with 2 connectors, and every additional 5,000 users add extra connectors. If you search for scale numbers around on citrix.cloud.com, Citrix.com, you will get documentation specific to this. Netscaler, I would not have the exact specifics, but I know we have throttle numbers for those as well. We could share the details. I think there, if I remember it right, the number is around 1,000, but we can double check for you.
Also, I have a question that was sent before the webinar. So is Citrix focusing its attention on Google since the announcement of Microsoft Virtual Desktop?
Yeah, I think it was not even, I would say the answer is we are focusing our support for Google. So as I think somebody mentioned before, we've already got power management support, and then we are looking at more provisioning support as we go along. This was anyways going to be the case, and you would hear better alignment with Google, not just on the virtualization side, but also towards the G Suite, the device type. So yes, we have a core initiative with Google anyways.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're pretty much at the hour. I think that we've gone through most of our questions. I know that there may be some we didn't get to or some that might have been answered in the chat. So unless there's any final thoughts that any of you have or would like to say, I can go ahead and get us closed out. Does anyone have any final thoughts?
Yeah, if you have other questions, you can reach to us. You can reach to us by Twitter mostly, and we can answer most of them as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thanks, guys, on the panel. Sorry, Steph, all I was saying is thanks, guys, for having me on the panel. It was good talking to all of you.
Thank you for joining us today. And I want to thank everyone for attending today. And thank you to all of our panelists for being on today. There was a lot of questions, a lot of really great questions. And as we mentioned at the top, we'll put together something with the Q&A to publish on mycugc.org afterwards so that you can refer back to it. Tomorrow you will receive an email with a link to a recording from today and some other resources like the link to a forum thread where if you have more questions, you can type those in on our forum as well. I put a link in the chat for you. It's a short survey. It's anonymous. It's very quick. We just like to get your feedback on our webinars and help us, you guys help us plan our future webinars, so we like to know how we're doing. And finally, just follow us on Twitter and go to mycugc.org. If you're not already a member of your local group, find it and get involved. We have local groups all over the world. So most likely we have one near you. So find your group and get involved. And with that, I thank everyone again. Christiaan, Harsh, Marius, Nicolas, and Paul, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time today.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, everyone, stay warm if you're in a cold place, and if you're in a warm place, enjoy it. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.